Okay. So Sam and I saw Barbie. We actually saw it 2 days ago. We right after I filmed the Oppenheimer review, we went out and saw Barbie that same day. We did the Oppen-Arby feature, the double header. In this review, I had to give it some time, some air to think about it. I have a lot to say about this movie. I actually have more to say about Barbie than I do Oppenheimer. Not to say that one is a better movie than the other. Oppenheimer is clearly much better. But I think the fact that I have so much to say about Barbie from an art standpoint is also very interesting, to the point where I made a couple notes of some things I want to hit on. Now, to start this, I want to say that this review is really for people who've kind of seen it. I'm not going to go over any spoilers with the plot. I will say that there's almost nothing to spoil about the movie, which is part of what I'm going to talk about, but you are going to get more out of this, more conversation out of this if you've already seen the movie. I want to start out by saying that I'm not the audience for this movie, and that was very clear to me throughout. So everything that I say takes a grain of salt, because this movie was not meant for me. The message was not meant for me. The sentiments were not meant for me. The nostalgia wasn't meant for me, as I never was really a Barbie kid. I mean, obviously my sister had Barbies and I played with them in that sense, but I never had the connection that I think the audience is meant to have to get what this movie is intending to get, for you to get out of it. Overall, it's a bad movie. And I'm saying that just from a plot standpoint. Now, I went in with pretty low expectations. I am very sensitive and very critical of like any sort of corporate messaging. I'm very critical of commercials, advertising, marketing, just because the emotional manipulation that corporations do without taking any risk is something that drives me crazy. But this movie did something very different, which I'll get to in a minute. But overall, the plot is extremely bland. It plays out exactly. The emotional beats hit it point for point. I'd say if you have a general idea of what you think this movie is going to get at you, knowing that Mattel had their fingers very deep in this, you already know how the movie ends. And I've even found myself towards the end of the movie like ready to go, just because I was like, okay, I know how this is going to end. There's nothing really more for me to see. It is a women empowerment movie overall, to put it very simply. But the points that I'd like to really applaud it on, that I found the most interesting, and again, maybe this is because I went in with such low expectations, but Mattel came in and took a huge brand risk. I cannot overstate how much of a risky position they took in this. It's very meta. They comment a lot about themselves as a company, to the point that the art direction, this is a little bit of a giveaway, but not a spoiler of the movie. They kind of put themselves in the light as this evil corporate entity run by men. And the men are pretty much the antagonist of the movie, mainly the patriarchal structure. And for them to pin that social negativity on themselves, I thought was incredible. But I think that they did it with someone like Greta Gerwig, who I think was a very thoughtful director for this movie. I think they worked hand in hand, where they said, this is what we want to do. We ultimately want to put Barbie and the product in a good light, but we're willing to cut our own teeth a little bit in the process to get there. And I think they did that really, really well. And I have to applaud them I've never seen a commercial, which is what this movie essentially was. I've never seen a commercial take such a risk, because they really, depending on how you view this movie, could come out looking kind of like part of the problem. And I think some of the social commentary that they give towards themselves as a toy company, they are openly recognizing that the company has been through, and the image of Barbie has been through many negative phases that have, depending on how you look at it, may have hurt or helped female empowerment. So I think it was a pretty honest approach that they took to it. And it's, in my opinion, not very common for a company to fund an honest approach of themselves. Usually they are going to do it very manipulative. Not to say that there wasn't manipulation involving here. They obviously had the biggest, most profound ad campaign that I've seen in years. I don't know budget-wise what they spent on it, but for the last month and a half, the virality of all the internet memes and stuff, which was I presume very much controlled and kindled by them, was massive. I saw Barbie everywhere. Every single thing. Hold on. Okay, just make sure my audio is going. Every single commercial, every single like thing on YouTube, on all my streaming services were all like Barbie focused in some way. Google was pairing with them. Car commercials were pairing with them. Obviously, Chevy had a humongous role in the movie, which is also weird because Chevy had a big role in A Man Named Otto. So I don't know if they're just like putting a bunch of investment in movies. I don't know what that is, but just Barbie was everywhere, and so that the ad campaign was hugely successful. I feel like I've watched the Barbie trailer, intentionally or unintentionally, more than any movie I have in the last decade for trailers. So I was very surprised in the audience when, like, all of the jokes that were the big, huge moments for the movie, were all in the trailer, but yet the huge audience, which the theater was packed, by the way, it was getting erupted laughs at every single joke. And I'm thinking, like, I've heard this joke so many times, I couldn't possibly, even if I ever thought it was funny, I couldn't possibly drum up a laugh because it's just like I could almost rehearse the lines. But it blew me away. I'm thinking, is my algorithm, is the way that I'm seeing my advertising different than anyone else's? Like, are most people in here never seen the ads? So that was like a little bit enigma, not really anything towards the movie, just like an off side. The humor, I think, was good, better than I would have expected, or maybe as good as I would have expected, given how kind of silly and weird and meta the movie was. But I want to be very clear, it was 1,000% held up by the direction and the performances of the cast. All of the humor in it for me was in the nuance of how the lines were delivered, how the performances, like the facial expressions they made when the line was moving. But the jokes, the writing itself was very weak. The comedy, I think, in the writing of the script was almost like non-existent. So I have to applaud that there was clearly a lot of talent in the actual production to punch up these jokes a lot. And I think there were a ton of moments that got verbal, laughter out of me. And it was just because of the nuances of how the joke was crafted and portrayed by the talent and the direction and the moment. So, I think, again, there was a ton of talent, but the movie itself was kind of a desert. And I think that goes back again to it was a risk. There was a risk involved for sort of everybody that this movie was. It's such a corporate created item that then took on very talented and very creative people to make it into something worthwhile and worth watching. If you felt that way, I think it's worth noting that Sam, my wife, absolutely hates the movie. I mean, she was very upset by how much she hated the movie. She thought it was very stupid. I don't want to put words in her mouth, and I don't want to misquote her, but overall, I think I could sum it up with her. She found the messaging of the movie, the emotional messaging, to be very contrary and very tired. And I will agree that it is sort of a message, and this is what I was saying, that I kind of knew what was going to be happening, and I think most people would understand the tone because the subject of the movie, female power and women being undermined through history and even today. It kind of just did exactly the bullet points of everyone. I don't think it brought anything particularly new to the table. There is a monologue towards the end where this character is kind of breaking down all of the paradoxes that women are held to in terms of standards. That's a rant and a quote that I feel like I've heard other times. Specifically, there's a Dua Lipa song off of her album, which was a huge album. It's the last song on the album that almost like beat for beat hits those things. Not to say that making that statement twice negates everything that was being said, but it just sort of took the zeitgeist and respelled it out in a movie. So I don't, I have to agree with Sam as well that it wasn't really bringing anything new to the table. And she had some points that were, saying how the movie was making choices that she felt as a woman were contrary to what they were trying to say. And I can certainly see that from her perspective. I think they had a great opportunity because, again, men were ultimately vilified, and I don't have an issue with that. I think that fits very well with the context of the messaging and the context of the movie, and I think they did it in a pretty humorous way that I think as a man, I can see that as welcomely self-deprecating. I wasn't particularly insulted by anything of it. But again, they were just kind of saying the stuff that we've all sort of heard before. But I think they had a better opportunity, and this is for people who've seen the movie. I'm going to speak somewhat vaguely. I think they had a better opportunity to wrap up that messaging so that it didn't feel so much like a firefight from my perspective of, it felt kind of gender war-ish that I don't per se have an issue with, but I will say that the movie had a great opportunity to bring the male characters around to sort of enlighten them rather than just saying, oh, things are back to normal. I don't know. I think they could have done a better character arc with the men to come to some sort of positive conclusion that fit better with the overall messaging of the movie and the direction that the movie is hoping society will go in. I think it was just sort of like, here's our point, and now everything's back to normal in the Barbie world. So I think that was just a writing weakness, and I think I don't know how they could have done that better per se. I just feel like there was a missed opportunity there that could have made the movie's messaging vastly more powerful and what we all took away from the movie vastly more powerful. I think this movie is being applauded for its, what I've seen is being applauded for its, what it's doing to the female movement. And I don't have a place to stand, I'll admit, because again, it's not really my voice that matters on that subject. But again, I'll just reinforce, just from a story perspective and a morality sort of teaching, I think there was some missed opportunities with, they had this amazing moment, and I think they built this incredible world. They had this great opportunity with a corporation backing them up that they just probably could have done more with that. And, I have to feel a little bit of evidence based on Sam's reaction to it. Now, Sam is not the voice of all women of the world, but I just think that difference in perception of the movie, I think, is probably not really what they're hoping for, but probably what they were somewhat expecting. Overall, I'm glad this movie was made, and I'm glad I saw it. Will I see it again? Absolutely not. Do I think it's a good movie? Absolutely not. Do I think it has a really interesting social commentary? Not really for me, but it's not a movie for me. What I think this movie is worth noting in cultural history is, again, I think I have to applaud one more time. Mattel, in my view, took a humongous risk with this movie, and it obviously worked out for him financially, and from what I can tell, optics-wise, it's come out very much in their favor. And as somebody who is, I pay very close attention to, obviously, content creation world, YouTube world, which is very much ad supported, and there's a ton of conversation and controversy around brands and companies not willing to take risk when it comes to creativity. A lot of people being demonetized because of slightly racy jokes, not even racy, but what they perceive to be risky jokes. And I thought this whole movie was sort of one giant risky joke. And I think I speak for all creators and really all enjoyers of any media that brands don't need to be so afraid of being associated with stuff that you love, whether or not they think it fits their morals or not. I think that's always irrelevant to the conversation. And I think that Mattel making this movie, I'm willing to stand by the fact that I think what they said with this movie is irrelevant to what I think they're doing as a company. Well, yeah. I that's not worded the way I want it to be, but you get the idea. So I recommend seeing this movie. I don't recommend it in terms of like a movie to see for any sort of like cinematic value personally, but I think you should watch it because I do think it's going to sort of, I hope, make a statement for, if nothing else, companies being involved with movies, because normally when you see corporations and companies become involved with a movie, you get utter garbage. And I mean utter garbage in the way of like just super boring, no self-deprecation whatsoever. And so, okay. So that so So that's my overall thoughts of this movie. How long was I talking here? About 15 minutes. So I had 15 minutes worth of stuff to say on this movie. Again, I had to give it a little more time. I think I'll even think more about this, and I'll probably disagree with some of the very things I've even said here. But overall, what I'm trying to get across is, I think this movie had a great conversation around it. I mean, Sam and I had a much more interesting conversation, in my opinion, on the way back from Barbie than we did on the way back from Oppenheimer, in terms of dissecting the movie and having a conversation. And if art is anything, it's supposed to be starting a conversation and getting you feeling something. And I think this movie did that in a very different and maybe unintentional way. So thanks for watching.